Hey everybody, Chris Pies here with another PCA Sim Racing Classroom. This week we are going into week 3 of Series 15 for PCA Sim Racing, and we are headed to an old familiar track, one that is near and dear to many of our hearts, Sebring International. First couple of weeks, or the first couple of rounds, we've been at new tracks for PCA Sim Racing, starting with Mexico, and then the last round was at Phillip Island down in Australia. Both of these were new tracks for PCA members. You may have driven them through other series or other leagues, but for us it was new, and so they represented a kind of challenge that for those of us that could devote a lot of time, may be able to get a little bit of a faster, or there may have been a big skill gap between those that have never run those tracks and those that have run them previously or spent a lot of time really learning them and honing them. Sebring kind of brings a little bit more parity back. We're going to a track that usually most people are very confident with, or if they're not confident, they at least know where the track goes, and they have a general idea of how to handle Sebring. So today, like always, we will go through and do a track walk of Sebring. Hopefully I can give you some tips and hits on what I do to try to go quickly there, and hopefully you can use that in your practice and ultimately races for this next round 3 for Series 15. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get this started. I'm going to go ahead and load up the replay that I've got, that I prepared with a lap time for Sebring. Sebring is, if for those of you, and there's probably not too many of you that have never run Sebring, but just in case there's somebody that hasn't, Sebring is an old school American track, built way back the track has been there since I believe the 60s or late 50s. Half of it is on an old World War II airfield, so there's a lot of concrete and different surfaces, especially on the latter half of the track and the front straight. They're also really bumpy, and it's important when setting up the car for Sebring is to know that there's going to be a lot of bumps that go up and down and can unsettle the car. Luckily, most of the time you're headed in a straight line, but not always. And so we have to be prepared for the bumps, how we can use them, understand where they're present in the track, and what to watch out for. So I am going to try to, with my technical prowess that I have created, so I'm going to switch the stream to my screen, and hopefully that will give you guys sound. Okay, so again, Sebring, for those of you keeping record at home, the lap that we're going to take a look at is a 1:59.4, and the track state is 92 degrees. So during the race it may be cooler. 92 degrees is starting to get up there in temperature, so that can degrade the lap time. So if it is a cooler track temperature during the race and practice, you could expect to, if you're on the bleeding edge, go a little bit quicker than this just from temperature alone. But I think what I felt with this, although I did have a faster lap, this felt like a really good model lap to try to teach off of. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. I'm going to go ahead and let it play through without me talking, and so you can kind of get an idea of the speed that we're going to be looking at. So there we go. So that, like I said, was a 159.4 race fuel, race trim, not quality trim, at 92 degrees Fahrenheit. So let's take it turn by turn to try to get a little bit better understanding of, why we're doing that or how we're doing that. And hopefully you guys can go faster as well. So first things first, the straightaway here at, let me just get a good angle here. The straightaway here at Sebring is bumpy and is a bit of a concrete canyon. So coming out of the final turn, and we'll talk about Sunset, the final sets of turns towards the end of the lap. But the big thing that we want to remember coming down the straightaway is that at some point we need to move the car over to the right side of the track to set up for turn one. Coming out of Sunset, we end up all the way on track left. And so as we come out of this, we need to move our car over at some point. There may be a temptation to try to move over quickly, just because it's the next thing to do. And we tend to want to do something, especially coming out of a series of corners like Sunset. But understand you have a long time to make that move. And so traffic can get a little hairy coming down the straightaway. People can have different runs coming out of the final corner. And so there may be a chance where there's somebody on the right side of you, or you're on the inside of somebody else. So just be cognizant of, as you come out of this corner, you don't have to move all the way to the right as fast as possible. That bridge down at the end that says Chevrolet on it, that is before the actual turn-in point for turn one. So you have from now into that bridge to actually move over. So no rush whatsoever, and you can take your time doing it. So coming down the straightaway, what we are going to do is we're going to try to move over and get as far over to the right as we can by turn in. And turn in for turn one at Sebring has got a nice... In iRacing, it's a little different than it is in real life because the wall doesn't quite have a kink like it does in iRacing. So if we look ahead, we can actually see this concrete wall go forward, and then there's a little bit of a kink right here. That is basically our break just before that turn in point for turn one. So I'm always looking for this little kink in the wall. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come up to that first kink and we're going to start braking a little bit before it. So we're maybe 2-3 car lengths ahead of it. I've already started to basically bleed on the brakes just a touch. I'm on full brakes basically by the kink. And then I have started my turn in just after the kink. My eyes are down here and to the apex of turn one. And what specifically I'm looking for is the little sign that sticks out of the fencing up at the top. I think it has a 0 on it. And I'm trying to drive my car underneath the sign. That's the apex point. If we get to the wall or an apex that is before that sign, we are going to run out of track on the exit and we're going to end up in the dirt unless we slow down. If we apex after the sign, we could have gone a little bit quicker and apexed a little bit sooner to maximize the efficiency of the corner. So we're losing some time in that we were too slow on entry. So this is what it looks like. On our way in, we're looking for that sign. Oh, in real life, there's a 0 sign right here. I forget, in iRacing, it's a cone. So here's the cone. It's the same thing. We're looking for this cone that's sitting up in the sky, that's sideways. We want to drive and apex the car underneath the cone. The closer we can get to the wall, the better in general. Ideally, at the very least, we want to get our inside tires inside the yellow line at the cone. And that's the apex point. If we get that, we can be confident in that we can go to the power after that cone at the apex point, and we'll end up in a really good spot on the exit without running into the dirt, as you can see here. It's a super high commitment corner. There's not a lot of room for error. There's also very difficult to take this too wide because if I take it again and we take it slowly, look how much this car is bouncing around coming through here. So there's going to be one big bounce here. The car is kind of jumping around, and then there is a massive bounce on the way out. The suspension of the car is really working overtime, rocking back and forth, trying to deal with the bumps. In real life, they're much worse than they are in sim, frankly. You actually almost jump, frankly, in a cup car through here. So at least it's not that bad. But in general, the takeaways for turn one are look for the kink, brake just before the kink in the wall, turn in just after the kink, get off the brakes, roll the speed in, look in fourth gear for that cone, apex under the cone. Once you get under that cone in fourth gear, you can hammer it and let the car take its natural course, and you should end up out here on the curbing without really any risk of getting into the dirt. Turn one, from a passing perspective, try not to do it. It's very tempting, especially coming off a straightaway, to try to force a move here. I would never force a move on the outside of turn one. If you're going to make a move on someone and you're the attacking car, do it on the inside. If you're the car that is being attacked, I would strongly try to defend. I would kind of come off the wall a little bit, make it so it doesn't look very appetizing for a car to try to attack you, make them have to go the long way around. But what ends up happening to cars that tend to try to pass around the outside here is they tend to run out of room and go into the grass on the exit. So the other thing I will say about turn one in general is pit exit. Pit exit is this final cone that's down here. So you have all these cones, and then you have one final cone here at the end. As long as you go around that cone, you're good to go. So you can cross the white line down here. You can't clip this cone, or else you'll get exit unsafely from pit lane. You'll get a drive-through that iRacing will give you. So as long as you go around the cone, you're good to go. When you come out of pit lane, you've got a nice wide arc coming into turn one. What you need to do is you need to stay on that wide arc, and you need to enter the track into turn one almost in a straight line effectively. So you will be coming from this direction out here where my cursor is, and you will end up going into the exit of turn one straight. What you don't want to do is cut across the track for some reason and come down the left side of the track, because you will be crossing the racing line with cars coming at full speed that can't maneuver to avoid you. And the cars will come up really quickly if somebody's crossing this. If somebody's crossing the racing line on the exit of turn one, they can't see, the cars on tracks cannot see that car until it's too late. And there's nothing they can do. They're already at absolute maximum grip. They can't hit the brakes. They can't do anything. So just be aware coming out of pit lane to make sure that you're staying track right. Even though you will end up on the racing line, it is much safer for the car that will be approaching you to be able to identify you in plenty of time and maybe pinch off the exit, as opposed to the slow car crossing across the track trying to get offline. Just stay on line. You should be okay. All right, so turn one is good. We've got a really good speed coming through there, so we're heading over into turn two and turn three. Turn two is this little kink that really is nothing, but we come into turn three, which is going to be this little infield section. One of the hallmarks of Sebring is there is no elevation. We are in Central Florida. Everything is super flat. That means that the sight lines and the visual cues for Sebring are really not good. It's not easy to see through corners. You can't see exits. It's difficult to see apexes because everything is flat. So we really have to be disciplined in looking for certain sight markers to kind of try to guide us around the track. So our vision needs to be up. We need to be looking as far ahead as we can, but instead of looking for apexes and track exit points, we need to be looking at visuals that we can actually see. Sometimes that is visuals that are out on the horizon, like through the corner that stand up. So like the tire wall behind the track. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we're trying to aim and drive more point to point. So this corner is one of those that you kind of start to drive point to point a little bit. So the first turn in point, or the first point of interest, is the triple cone right here. As we come through turn two, we can cut a little bit through this little access road on the right. This is part of the track. So what we want to do is we ultimately want to hit this point where the cursor is, where the three cones, or this line, that is our braking point. And when we hit the brakes here, we're going to be hitting them pretty darn hard. So we want the car to be going in a straight line to maximize our braking force. We don't want to have steering angle when we hit this mark, because it's going to affect our ability to brake. So whatever line we're into coming through here, that is the line we are going to take, even if it's a little bit, angled towards turn entry into turn three. That's the line we have to take. So whichever line we're taking, we're going to take a straight line at that point. So what we want to do is we want to try to get the car over to the right just a little bit, so our line is about to mid-track. because then eventually we're going to trail brake and turn in. So the first point of interest is the cones. This is our braking marker. We're going to brake in a straight line, and we're going to downshift all the way down to second gear. Coming into turn 3, it always feels like you turn in too early for this corner. And frankly, I think you do turn in early. An early apex is usually a very, very bad vocabulary, but on this corner, it actually works. And the reason it works is because if we look at the track, even though Florida is flat, this particular corner has a little bit of camber right here on the entry, right where the curbing starts. You can see a lot of the track right here. You can't see a lot of the track here, and you can really start to not see a lot of the track past mid-track. So if we take a really late apex into this corner, we're not letting that camber help us. So what we want to do is we want to kind of try to dive the car in to try to take, one, advantage of the camber, and two, play for the inherent understeer in every GT3 car, but especially the Porsche. So it always feels like turn in is super early for this particular corner. And in fact, I start my turn in pretty much at this cone, this final cone. My vision is at the curbing, and I want to try to get this car down to the curbing as best I can. So as soon as I start turning into this corner, I'm going to start bleeding off the brake. So you can actually see when I started braking, I was probably at, my maximum brake pressure is right here. I'm probably at 85, 90% brake pressure, really slowing the car down. But by the time I get to this cone, I've backed off to about 70%, and now I've turned in. Now I'm sitting at about 30% brake pressure. So in the span of about, maybe 25 yards, or 25 feet, I've effectively bled off over half of my brake pressure, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to transition the car from a state of braking to a state of turning. So I'm following that traction circle. So I've used all my traction for braking. Now I'm starting to turn the car, and I want to roll around that traction circle and all of a sudden turn all my grip into lateral grip for cornering. So less brake, less brake, less brake. I've turned in early. Like I said, it feels like I'm turning in early, but because of the understeer in the car, it ends up being a little bit later than I was talking about before. If you wait to turn in, you'll always be too late for this corner. So as I've turned in, it has the effect of almost a late apex. As you can see, I still haven't apexed this corner yet. In general, my goal is to apex probably, if you're looking at from here, I'm trying to apex where almost the track starts to go up a little bit around the corner. So I turn in early, car understeers, and it leads me to apexing, boom, right here. So the car, or the road has actually kind of gone uphill just very slightly, but I am apexing all the way around the curbing, almost to the edge of the curbing is the ultimate goal. When I come out of this corner, it's going to spit me into mid-track. There's no way I can avoid that unless I take this corner way too slow. And that's fine, because we're immediately transitioning to a right-hand corner. So this corner, the first one, we want to carry speed in because we have a lot of speed coming through. The second corner is a complete throwaway to set up for the final corner leading on, which is turn 5 or 6, which is leading to effectively the back straight. Or at least the straight down into the hairpin. So the first left-hander, we carry a lot of speed. We maintain our speed. We end up in a really bad position for turn 4 here, going to the right, which is totally fine because, like I said, it's a throwaway corner. And in fact, we want to jump the curb from whatever angle we end up after turn 3. So turn 3, we end up in mid-track, fine. We end up past mid-track, that's fine too. At the end of the day, we're going to be jumping this curb over to the right. We're in second gear. Remember, we went down all the way to second. We ride second gear through here, jump the curb, and we'll usually end up about mid-track or slightly right of mid-track. And that's fine. We don't have to get the car all the way to track right. Because in order to do that, you will sacrifice time and speed to try to position the car to the right side. And frankly, the loss of speed and the further distance traveled to get the car on the right side does not is more than you would getting a run coming out of the corner. So wherever you kind of end up here is fine. I usually end up just right of mid-track like you see here. We're in second gear. Once we get the car straight, so we jump that curb. Once it lands, we get the car to the right, and we're now like a little bit parallel to this curbing on the right and we're headed into the corner this way, we're going to get on the brakes pretty quickly. We get on the brakes, slow the car down, and then it's just a little bit of a brake, and then we start tucking the car in with some trail brake to scrub some speed, and we are going to be very patient coming through turn 5. So we are going to wait, keep the car out. We're waiting for a super late apex. And the apex point, there's two ways you can kind of look at it. One of them is this curbing is going to take a little bit of an extra angle in sim. That's one way to see the apex. The other one is some yellow tires that are on the tire wall in the distance. So as we come in, here's the little knob right here where it's kind of been like a constant angle in the curbing. And then all of a sudden it tucks in tighter. So there's almost like a little point right here. That's your apex point. Or from the seat of the car, that apex point where the point is also matches up brilliantly with the orange tire barrier down at the end. So I tend to use this down here as I'm coming through. I'm looking for this tire barrier, and when that tire barrier crosses over with the curbing on the angle that I'm headed, I know that's my apex point, and I can accelerate out when I get the car facing that. Right here, boom. So that's my apex point. I'm pretty much almost full throttle at this point to get a good drive coming out of the car, or coming out of the corner. So we'll go back to far chase. And then as we exit the corner, we're opening our hands. Notice how the road has a crown. So the middle point is the highest point. You've got camber to the left and camber to the right. As we come through the corner or exit the corner, we're going to go from an on camber state to an off camber state. We just need to make sure that we're unwinding our hands as we do it. If we have too much steering angle because we apex too early, when we cross that crown in the road, we're all of a sudden going to lose grip. And we're in second gear screaming through here. A lot of torque and a lot of revs in the car. It's very easy, especially on cold tires. And if you have very, very ham-fisted hands and you've got a lot of steering angle, to loop the car through here. You'll crest that crown. You'll have a lot of steering angle. You've got your right foot pinned. All of a sudden, you're going to lose grip on the other side and the car will want to loop. So just make sure you're opening your hands to allow the car to have more grip to accelerate. If we do it right, we're going to hit this curbing. There's two kind of facets to this curbing. The first curbing up until about just before the DRS side, so right around here where my cursor is, the first curbing is pretty substantial. You'll feel it. And then once you get past that first shock, it'll actually fall off. And the second curbing, part of the curbing down here, is completely flat. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically touch the big curbing on the way out. So we're pretty much almost no steering angle when we hit that curbing. And then it will smooth out when we get further down. So there's the bump, and then it bottoms out right there, and we're good to go. In real life, there is the biggest hole all along here from people doing exactly what I'm doing out here and dropping a wheel on the outside of the curb. If you hit the dirt straight, it's not an issue. You don't even feel it. If you hit the dirt with steering angle, it can be an issue because you're asking for grip from tires that are now in dirt. So make sure if you do get to this point, your steering wheel is dead straight and you're headed for the right-hander here. Okay, any question? I know I threw just a lot at you. Turns 1 through 5, but this is kind of the first third of Sebring.
So Chris had a question back on turn 1.
Anchor first. Anchor, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just asking, you're staying in second the whole way through to this point?
Once I turn in turn 3, yes. So if we go back to turn 3, so there's turn 4. So at this point, so I'm coming down from 5th gear all the way to 2nd gear right here. So 4, 3, 2, 2nd gear. I roll 2nd gear through here, 2nd gear, and then brake. Still in 2nd gear, accelerate out of 2nd gear, and now I grab 3rd on the exit. So yes, 2nd gear from turn 3 all the way to the exit of turn 5.
Thank you.
Yeah. What was the other question?
Back on turn 1.
Yes.
You were talking about overtaking cars.
Yeah.
Where does the overtaking car have to establish position?
So, in accordance with the PCA rules, overtaking cars, I think, got to get their front bumper along the door. Correct me if I'm wrong. I may be wrong. But be very familiar with PCA rules on overtaking. So, if you're looking at the car and somebody is attempting to pass, or you're attempting to pass, and your front bumper is in line with the rear bumper of the car you're trying to pass, you don't have position. Be very, very familiar with what designates overtaking, because before the turn-in point, you've got to have that position. Because if you don't, and that other car that you're trying to pass comes down on you and hits you and spins as a result, the following car is going to be deemed at fault. And in fact, I got dinged for that in this past race. I had my front bumper probably in line with the other car's rear bumper, and I was trying to stick my nose in one of those tight corners at Phillip Isle. And the car I was trying to pass was taking a wide line, and then, diamond the corner and then came all the way down. And then by that point, I actually probably had my bumper along with his door, but we were diverging at such a rate. When he came all the way down to the curving apex point, I was there and I hit him basically in the wheel as a result. But I was deemed to be at fault because I hadn't established that position before the turn-in point. So even if you dive somebody in there, if you're diving in past the turn-in point, you don't have position. And if you end up having contact and the forward car ends up losing control or spinning as a result, the following car will get the penalty every time. So you got to basically get alongside the other car before the turn-in point. And at that point, if the outside car turns into you and you guys are alongside each other, you won't get a penalty. They turn down into you. So maybe different from other leagues, but that's the rules for PCA. And again, I invite everybody to go revisit that before the next race, just so you don't get caught out.
Yeah, the reason I asked, it's it's the turn-in point, but for this turn in particular, there's an awful lot of space remaining.
Yeah,
because this is the turn-in point where you have the car, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is where you start to get the gray area in the rules for race control to try to figure out what the natural turn-in point is. I mean, I would say the natural turn-in point is right around here. But yes, if you're the inside car, you could freaking dive it in here on this kind of line where my cursor is and stop the car basically at the wall and just trundle around the inside to protect. And you almost probably would get beyond the turn-in point, or you'd get beyond this car that was taking a traditional line before they got down to the apex point. But the problem with that is that, and the way the rule's written, is that it's the turn-in point, whatever that might be. So this car, even if they do a traditional route and you take it deep in, as long as they've gotten to the turn-in point and they've started their turn-in, if you dive in and even if you get past them because of a dive bomb, this car, you wash out and you hit this car for whatever reason, the car that is doing the diving is going to get the penalty every single time. So to try to avoid that, I think there's two ways you can kind of think of turn one. One would be, don't attempt something unless you are effectively getting alongside them for the braking zone. The second one would be, don't attempt it unless you are super confident and you've taken this line before to know that after he turns in, you can brake so much later that you just straight up get beyond him before they've tucked their nose in, right? And now you're in front of them, so there's no way somebody can argue that you hit them in the side. But just be very careful on that. Reserve. The other thing to remember is that two cars going too wide through turn one is so slow compared to one car taking the normal racing line. I mean, you will lose probably a second and a half to the field going too wide through turn one with somebody else. So be smart about it. If somebody looks like they're about to dive you into turn one, I would just wait. Delay my turn in a little bit more, let them go, and then tuck in behind them and get them somewhere else. If you're the passing car, I would wait and try to get a run coming out of turn one to try to get a pass maybe going into turn three. But turn one is super sketchy to get that pass done unless you're super confident with it. I hope that helps, Johan.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Is that it, or anybody else as I fast forward back to where we were? Okay. Let's continue. So we've gone through this little infield section, and now we're busting it down to hotel or turn 7 or the hairpin. Many different names for this one. The key here is there is a tendency, or there is a big desire to try to outbrake your opponent going into the hairpin. And frankly, it is a good opportunity to pass. We just need to, let's just focus on what a lap is without considering passing and going into the hairpin, and then we can talk about passing maybe at the very end. Because this is probably the highest chance for passing here at Sebring. But forgetting that, the big thing we need to do is we need to be able to pick a brake marker. That's probably the most important thing about this turn, is getting a consistent brake marker and going into this corner the same way every time. The tendency for the hairpin is you hit your brake marker, you hit the brake, you're pretty much right at threshold braking, and then you think you're looking up and you're saying, I broke too early, and you start releasing the brake too early. And then all of a sudden, when you get up to the corner itself, you're like, oh, no, I'm going too fast. And then you brake hard again. So a lot of students that I coach, I see a firm brake pedal. Everything's good on that front. And then they will actually release the brake a little bit, thinking they've broken too early. And then say, oh, no. And then brake hard again at the very end. And that results in them going too deep into the corner. And then they go too deep into the corner and they say, oh, I broke too late. So they move their braking point a little bit further or closer or further away from the corner. So they make their braking point earlier. Now they start braking too early, and they brake firm, and maybe they're lifting, maybe they're not. And now all of a sudden they're stopping too early, and they say, oh, well, I need to brake later then. And they get in the cycle of, I thought that was a good point, I thought that wasn't. Take a look at your data. If you're having trouble with the braking zone going into turn 7, take a look at your data to see what you're actually doing and how you're manipulating that pedal. It should be almost like a light switch in terms of hitting your peak brake force. And then as you get closer to the corner, it should just be a very, very casual drop off. So you should almost have like this plateau of peak braking force, threshold braking. And then at the very end, right before you start turning in, you should start to see that bleed off and that trail brake in. If you're seeing peak brake force, a trough, and then more brake force, and then you start seeing that drop off, you're doing that. And it can be subconsciously braking. Oh no, I broke too hard too early. Releasing. Oh no, I didn't brake enough. Braking again, and we want to avoid that. On this, and the conditions change, so as a track gets greasier, hotter, more rubber, it's going to change how much inherent grip is on the track. The brake marker that I'm showing you here may not be the brake marker for the race or your practice, but for this particular session, my brake marker was pretty much the 4-cone. And so when I'm braking, I'm boom, right here is where I'm hitting it. So it's almost at the 4-cone line. And then if you look at my brake trace down here on the left, the red bar, you will see how quickly that jumps up to pretty much peak. I am pretty much right at ABS, almost 100% brake pedal, and I will hold that all the way until I get to the corner effectively. So I am going to hold that brake. Now I start slowly bleeding it off, and then I'm turning in and I am out of it completely to allow the car to turn. The other caveat about turn 7 is don't turn in too early. It's very tempting at this point to be looking at that corner and saying, oh, I need to turn at some point. If you turn in too early, you're going to run out of road on the exit, and then you're going to have to delay your ability to get on throttle. What we want to view this corner as is a little bit of a diamond on the early part of the corner. When we go to power, we want to roll on the power pretty darn quickly and get a good squirt coming out of the corner. The exit is what is important coming out of this corner. And the way you have a good exit is you make the straightaway following this corner as long as possible. So we're effectively going to drive the car down in here where my cursor is. I'm exaggerating it. We're going to drive it down, get the car turned down here. So we're almost pretending the hairpin's over in this area. So diamond the corner early and then get a run coming out of the corner and squeezing out. So brake, turn in, down to first gear, off the brakes, roll the speed, start getting on first gear or getting on power and getting a good run coming out. So you can actually see right here at apex, I'm at half throttle. Just after apex, after I come off that curb and the car settles down, I'm pretty much at full throttle. Opening my hands the whole way because I'm in first gear. Any hands that I've got in the car is going to try to is going to limit the grip in the rear of the car because I'm asking the car to turn as well. So I have to be releasing my hands to accept the grip that I'm asking out of the rear of the car. So you can actually see the steering wheel at this point. When I get to full throttle, I've only got a very little bit amount of hands, and I am actively starting to steer straight. On the exit, we draw a straight line through this little S here. It's a non-issue, but we want to drive a straight line. We can drop our left side tires over this curb so long as our right side tires are right of the yellow line here, we're good to go. So straight line, as straight as possible. First gear, get a good run and get a good squeeze coming out of this corner. Second gear will come quick, or into first will come quick. We'll need to grab second pretty quick. So just be ready for it as the car runs out, and we can grab second going up into the S's. So as we come into the S's are completely flat. I'm going to let it run while I talk about it. But in general, still pretend they're corners because they are corners. So we still want to treat them as a turn in, apex, track out. We want to minimize our steering wheel movements as best as possible because the more steering angle we put in the front of the car, the more scrub and friction we're asking from the front axle. So the less rate of acceleration. So if we're just driving around the inside or whatever and we put a lot of steering angle in, we're not going to accelerate as fast as someone that is keeping their steering to a minimum coming through here.
Back to the hairpin.
Yes.
You don't have to go backwards. In the past, you've mentioned you get too much torque if you go to a slow corner and try and get out of it in first gear. Why aren't you in second gear taking that corner?
The reason I'm not in second gear taking that corner is because we can get a good squirt coming out of first gear. So the rule of thumb in general is you always want to try to stay in as high a gear as you can without bogging the engine and falling out of the power band. For the hairpin on this particular track, we're so far down in the rev range that if you're in second gear, one of two things is going to happen. The first thing is you're too slow for second gear effectively, so you're not in the power band. So when you go to power in second gear, the car is going to take a second while the torque starts to build and your horsepower and your torque curves start coming online. So you're going to fall out of the power band. So you're not going to get the squirt coming out of the corner. The second problem with second gear through the hairpin that I find is sometimes I end up going too fast to the corner. So I don't slow down enough. And when that happens and I go too fast on entry, now all of a sudden I can't get on throttle. I have to wait because I've overcooked the entry. Coming down to first gear gives me an audio cue because I've done so many laps here that I know what the car sounds like on the way in. And when I hear that kind of timber in the engine, that tells me, okay, I know that I'm at the right rev range in first gear to get a good squirt coming out of the corner. Coming out of the corner as well, I am on power long enough to make it worth it. So it's like a half a second or maybe like 0.8 of a second where I'm in first gear before I end up grabbing second. That's a decent amount of time where I am in the power band of the car getting a good amount of acceleration coming out of the corner. So that's why. I'm not saying second gear doesn't work, and it may work for you or somebody else based on your driving style. But for me, I just find that if I'm in second gear, I either go too fast on entry and end up flubbing the exit, or I get it right and I'm out of the power band and I'm having to wait for the car to pick up and I end up losing a couple of tenths on exit. But that's an absolute excellent question. If second gear is working for you, because if you're in second gear and you come out of that hairpin, if you're struggling with keeping the rear end in check, like you're hitting traction control all the time, you're fishtailing, try second gear because you're going to take torque out of the rear axle when the car is the slowest. And that can help you get a good run out because you're not hitting traction control. Redneck traction control is what I call it, taking that higher gear. So it's what works for you and works best for you, but I would try both and see which one yields the best time. But not only the best time, but which one is repeatable. That's the most important thing. What is repeatable for you and your driving standard is going to yield you the best result, rather than, oh, I can get it right 4 out of 5 times, but that 1 out of 5 times I end up spinning it and hitting the tire wall. Well, you don't want to do that at all if that's the case. So do the repeatable one for you. but great question.
So I might be a redneck. I get it.
Oh yeah, you know. All right, so now we're coming up to turn. I always forget. I want to say this is turn 10, because the S's all count as turns. So we did 7 as the hairpin, 8, 9, 10. So we're coming up to turn 10. This is one of my favorite corners on the track because it's so unique. The goal for turn 10 is it's a traditional entry into the corner, but as you can see or can't see, there is no track visible, meaning there's no camber helping us. This corner is like completely flat, if not off camber. So there's very, very little grip. And the way I handle this corner, the way I think about it on entry is the goal is to get off the brakes. Get off the brakes as soon as you can so you allow the car to have all of its grip currency for turning. If we have any brake in the car while we're doing the entry into this corner, past the initial trail brake, we are taking grip away from turning. And we need all that grip to get around this corner. So it always feels like a brake, turn in, and then as we turn in, and then I hop off the brakes as fast as possible. And that thing just really, once you get off the brakes with the car on the entry into this corner, the front end just kind of really grips and gives you some turning. So if you're struggling with 10, running in too hot and too deep, it's almost counterintuitive. You're thinking, I need to slow down the car more. Well, true, and that may be very true, but you also need to make sure you're using your grip effectively in the car. By getting off the brakes, you're allowing more grip to be given to lateral grip, which is turning grip. So what does that look like? So coming into this corner, we're going to brake halfway between the 3 cone and the 4 cone. We're going to downshift all the way to second gear. Firm brake, but as you see right here, I turn in pretty much at the last cone. I've already started bleeding off my brake. I'm still bleeding off my brake. I'm taking a nice wide entry. And now look at this. Maybe, I don't know, 10 feet in, I've almost completely off the brake pedal. The car is going to we want to take a nice late apex as late as we can, but the way it's achieved is by getting off that brake pedal and letting the front end take that grip or use that grip. After we go through turn 10, we're going to end up on the left side of the track if we take it quickly. That's fine because turn 11 and turn 12 are flat out even from the left side of the track in a GT3 car. There's no reason why we need to get the car over to the right to take the next 2 sets of corners. So the goal here is take this like a traditional corner, late apex, roll our speed through. We're going to end up on the left portion of the track right here. And you can actually see the track is a little bit off camber. So as we go through that corner, we have no grip in the track. So we have to understand that and get off the brake pedal so the car will take that, have enough grip to make that corner. At this point, we're on the left side of the track. This next left-hander looks really bad from a setup standpoint. But if we start thinking about the corner, hey, I can actually see a lot of the track compared to the previous corner. That means there's camber here on the inside. Look at all that delicious grip that we haven't seen all track. We want to take advantage of that. So when we come through this left-handed, we want to get all the way down, kissing the curb. We don't want to get up on the curb because the curb is quite large. We want to get as close as we can without touching it so we can take advantage of the camber all the way through. So we're in second gear through here. We'll take this corner from wherever we end up over here, frankly. And so on this particular lap, you can see I am left of center. But we're in second gear. I am 100% flat all the way through here. I don't lift. And it's a double apex corner. We'll apex on the last one, and then we will keep our hands open because if once tires start to get warm, once tires start to lose grip and degrade, and once the track temperature starts to increase and things start to get a little bit greasy, depending on how you can take that second apex, the car can start to move around a little bit. So I always make it very apparent and keep my hands nice and quiet all the way through here, opening my hands. You've got all of this track to work with on the exit. There is no reason coming through turn 10, 11, 12 why you have to pinch this corner off. There is no reason coming through here that you have to keep this car over to the left to set up for tower. No reason whatsoever. So drive the car. Let the car run. Keep its speed. Open your hand so you have a nice stable platform all the way through here on the exit. A lot of people try to get the car over here over where my cursor is, and I don't understand why. I mean, I understand why. You're trying to set up tower for a straight entry, but as you can see in a second, it's not necessary because we're going to end up in the same spot even from this position. So as we come up into tower, which is called tower because of the tower that you can see here for the airport. From this angle, we're going to basically take a straight line that's going to go across the track, end up on the left rumble, and then we will do our final turn in from that left rumble. So our brake zone is going to be diagonal across the track to the rumble. We're going to get to that rumble, and then we are going to take our final turn into tower. Tower is always faster than you think it is. I mean, it's difficult to get right, but when you get right, you'll be like, how did I take this any other way? It's always speed, speed, speed. So here's the first line. So this is the diagonal brake zone that I was talking about. So it's going to be from the apex of this little right-hand kink to this rumble strip. That's my brake zone. Boom, like that, diagonally. So I will brake as soon as the car kind of comes off this curb and brake towards the curbing out here on the outside. So I'm scrubbing the speed that I need to scrub, and I'm getting the car to the right spot, which is right here. At this point, the name of the game is get off the brakes. Like turn 11, turn 13's got a lot of camber, a ton of camber, and it's all right at the curbing. So we want to use it as best as possible. So we need to take a nice wide angle in. We need to get off the brakes, roll our speed in, and we need to get on the throttle as soon as we can to carry and roll that momentum through the entry of the corner. So I'm going to get off the brakes really early. As you can see here, I'm pretty much off the brakes already, and I just started my turn in. I haven't even left the curb yet. I am now starting to pick up throttle at this point. So I've just left the curb. I'm starting to actually accelerate coming out of the corner. And my goal and my vision, I am trying to get these right side tires as close to this curbing inside this yellow line as I can, right at the maximum amount of grip, maximum amount of camber in the corner. It's a super late apex, but when you're in the car and at speed, you'll kind of see this curb take a really sharp turn. That's your apex point, that really sharp turn. So we're trying to get all the way down here to this really sharp turn and accelerate coming out of the corner. There's a ton of grip right there at the apex. We can really hammer on the throttle, opening our hands on the exit. As we come out of the corner, we're going to transition from concrete to, I believe it's asphalt again, so the surfaces are going to change. But the grip's going to go away too. The road is becoming uncambered. It's flattening out. And so if we have a lot of steering angle coming out of this corner and we just mash the throttle, we're going to probably end up spinning. The other danger part of tower is either apexing too early or carrying too much speed, which is pretty rare for people learning the track or trying to get faster and faster, is running wide out in the dirt. If you find yourself running out here into the dirt, it's probably because you turned in too early and you apex too early, not because of the speed. If you do find yourself dropping tires out in the dirt, just keep your hands straight, slowly get out of the throttle, drive the car straight, and bring it on nice and safe. The people that get in trouble are the ones that drop tires in the dirt, try to save it, and they just end up spinning and they end up hitting the Armco on the right side of the track. They just end up spinning and T-boning the Armco. So if you do go in the dirt, just take your medicine, open your hands, drive straight, get out of the throttle, get it under control, and bring it in nice and safe on line. So I'm going to rewind tower just because it's such an important corner. It's so fast, and it leads on to a really long straightaway. So like I said, I like to take it from the inside here because it just gives me a little bit more room to work with. So as I apex here, then I brake, go all the way down to the curbing on the left, late turn in, off the brakes, start accelerating at the compression point, opening my hands using all the curb on the exit to get a good run to go down into Indianapolis. All right, these next couple of left-handers are the fastest on the track. If you get a good run through tower, there's not really too much of a risk to get past because everybody can only go so fast through tower. It's not a side-by-side situation. The thing I will say about coming through this fast double left-hander is we need to make sure we're using all of the track. Don't get lazy with it. Don't miss your apexes. Just really focus on double apex. And frankly, the most important one is the last apex, but it's easy to get there if you double apex it. So we're going to be at this curb on the right. We're going to hit the apex on this left-hander here. And then we kind of just keep the steering angle in the car. So we don't have to turn in tighter. We don't have to do anything, but we just kind of keep this constant angle in the car. And we will end up hitting the second apex. And when we hit the second apex here, we want to do it in such a way that we keep the car over to the left to set up for the right-hander. The brake zone for this right-hander is super important to get right. It tends to be right around the 3 cone. Sometimes you can, if the track is really hot or there's really not much grip, you can use the end of the curbing as also a good guide on where you want to brake. But usually it's about the 3 cone. So boom, right here, we're going to brake. We're going to keep the car on the left side, and we're going to, again, really focus on getting off the brakes and rolling the entry speed into this corner. It's a super fast corner. We don't want to get on the curbing. iRacing updated this track with 3D curbing about a year ago. Used to, you could straddle the curbing, no problem. You can't do that anymore. You'll bottom out and upset the car. So we want to just nibble the curbing, but we don't want to get up on it. There's a pretty nasty bump a little past the apex point that we don't want to touch. So our entry is going to be, like I said, fast. It's around this cone. Just before this cone is our turn in. Our eyes should be way down here. We're going to be in 4th gear on our entry into it, or 3rd gear, sorry, on our entry into it. And we're going to take a nice wide line, very little brake. We're going to get off the brake, and we want to start accelerating through this corner. So when we hit the accelerator, we're settling the rear of the car. We're pushing the rear Michelins into the ground through accelerating, which is going to give us grip in the rear of the car. And we're going to basically take this corner pretty darn quick. A little bit of a nibble of the curbing is okay. We just don't want to get all the way up on it to avoid the big nasty bump. Also of note, notice how the whole track is angled to the left. So we're off camber through this corner. So this corner is doing everything it can to try to make us understeer through it. If we do it right, we'll end up all the way on track left, carrying our speed, which is fine because then when we do our transition over to the left, it's pretty simple. The goal with the left-hander is to take a nice late apex and overturn the car off here into the left, the runoff area. This is all part of the racetrack, and we want to get over here to the left to open up the important corner, frankly, of this whole complex, which is this final corner. I think it's turn 16. So what that looks like is we're turning in here, a little bit of a lift because we can't keep the throttle absolutely planted. There's not enough grip in the car. But ultimately, the goal is to get the car somewhere out here in this position. So it's like this whole section is like skiing. We're skiing through the downhill. Once we get over and we hit this next little, we're going to lean on that left ski. Now we're going to start our turn-in point for the final turn 16 to lead on to the straightaway. This corner, we're going to be looking through the corner. It's a tough corner. There's not a whole lot of markers to use for reference points. The goal that I find here is we're going to be staring, or we're going to be looking for the exit curbing as best as we can, and that's going to be our primary focus. So we're going to be looking through the corner, and we really want to focus on taking a late apex through this final corner. I like 3rd gear. You can take it in 2nd gear, but I find 3rd gear tends to settle the car down a little bit more, and I tend to carry a little bit more speed in 3rd gear. So I like 3rd gear better. But nice wide entry. Again, the track is off camber through here, so it really is trying to throw us off the track. So there's a lot of understeer in the car. But if we keep our eyes up and we look for the exit curbing way down here, and we look for this exit tire wall where the tires end, that's kind of where we're trying to apex this car, so far around the corner. We can get up on the curbing a little bit, but not a lot. We don't want to straddle the curbing. We don't want to attack it too hard because it is pretty nasty. when we hit our apex point, our focus is to get off the brakes and get on throttle as soon as we can. But understand that you can't get on throttle too early on this corner, else you'll just end up understeering off the track. And in particular on this lap, I mean, I used every inch of the track. I mean, I'm over here all the way in the dirt. So this is not a 1X. This was okay. But just be wary that it is very, very easy to run too wide through here because you either carried too much speed or you turned in too early and you understeered off the track. So, all right. Any questions on kind of this last third of the track before we get to the final corner, Sunset? I'm going to show this set of corners one more time without me starting and stopping it because they're tough. So we'll get to this point right here. And let's go forward. So turning in, keep the car all the way left, brake at the 3 cone, late turn in, off the brakes, roll the speed through, slowly start to feed on the throttle, let the car run all the way to track left, a little bit of a lift of the throttle, skiing through here. We're going to let the skis go all the way, then we're going to start our turn in as soon as we kind of get out there to take a nice late apex coming through the corner. Yeah. All right, cool. So now we're down the big back straightaway at Sebring. Great opportunity to get a good run coming through turn 16 on your opponents. Draft them all the way down the straightaway and really get a good spot to get a good pass on them coming into the final last couple of corners here. The big thing that I would say that we need to focus coming into this final set of corners is we need to pick a really good brake zone through here. Ideally, there are infinite amount of lines through Sunset, and not all of them work for everybody. So we need to try to pick one that is repeatable for us as drivers. And as a result, when we do that, we repeat it over and over through the race and that we're consistent with it. That doesn't mean that we need to turn our mind off to every other option of lines. We need to also be aware of other opportunities to have other lines because Sunset invites side-by-side cars going into it because of the long straightaway. And all those lines allow really aggressive angles and lines coming into the corner. And if you only drive one line, you can kind of get blinders on and ignore all else. And that means that if you have somebody alongside you and they take your line away, you're going to be clueless on what to do. So really focus on different lines. I will kind of try to show you what my line is on a hot lap or driving by myself. But I will try to talk through alternate lines as well. So if I'm just by myself trying to put down lap times, I'm in a GT3 car going to go all the way past the 2 cone and start approaching the 1 cone and then brake right around here. So I'm braking just before the 1 cone, and my entry into this corner is going to be pretty wide on the entry with a final turn late apex. And what that looks like is we're going to drive the car in super deep. We're going to slow the car down, get the car turned, and then kind of diamond it about there and then get a good run coming out of the corner. So driving it in deep, braking, still slowing the car. And then once the car has finally gotten to around here and is slower, I will get off the brakes in 3rd gear and I will start rolling the speed for the first or the second part of this corner. So I'm rolling speed. And then at this point, there's kind of a double apex. We are going to have just before the bridge, there's going to be this concrete wall on the right that's going to really turn in. That's apex 1. And then there's going to be a second apex around the corner where the grass is apex 2. So we're going to get the car turned in. So here's apex 1 right here, right before the bridge, where the concrete wall is. And then ultimately apex 2 is going to be over here where the grass is just before this cone. Now on this particular lap, I missed the completely blue apex 2. But I was trying to chase a lap time, so I was keeping my foot in it, going for broke. But ideally, if you get your car tucked in where it's apexing and taking a line a little bit later than where I am on this particular line, you can be full throttle and have full confidence that you're not going to hit this wall on the outside. So the closer you can get to the cone, the better on exit for this corner. On this particular lap, like I said, I was trying to go for it, so I was trying to carry as much speed and was able to hold it just fine. So the other thing I wanted to kind of show, if we go, let's see if I can do this without it being too weird. Let's do chase and get super high so you can see what this corner actually looks like. Because it's interesting. It's not what you really think. So if we look at this corner down here, you're gonna lose my cursor when I hit spacebar, but look at the entry on the way in the brake zone. So way down there, the first brake zone, which is down here where my cursor is, on the entry into this corner, it's super wide and it's super receptive to driving it in super deep. And then the corner tightens up, and then we kind of get this even set of corners on the way out. So in general, what we're trying to do, the general idea is with the cursor, is we break it in deep through here, get to this point where the cursor is. That's our kind of the point where we're starting our final turn in. And then what we're going to try to do is drive this car around apex 1, which is right here, drive it around, and then apex 2 on the way out of the corner. So it's a deep dive on the brakes on the entry, take a nice wide angle, and get a good run coming out. That's only one line. Another line is to brake maybe a little bit earlier, get the car on a shallower line, and basically keep it really tight to this wall. Get the car down to this first apex point. We're going to have to really slow the car down to make the second one, but in general, we're keeping it and taking the shortest route around this corner. Super effective, especially if you're defending a position. You don't want somebody to try to dive it on the inside. Another line is a hybrid of the two, so kind of drive it in the middle and then just kind of keep it in the middle of the road all the way for a final apex and get a good run out. You can do that. And then any variation of those three lines works as well. And so it's a line that you can get a lot of creativity. Let's see if I put this in motion. Is it going to, it might make people sick, but you can see on this particular corner with this turn how I took it. I went in deep, turned it in, apex 1, and then apex 2, and then get a good run coming out. That makes me sick looking at it. I'm not going to show that again. The one thing I will say is if you venture off this wall, this first apex out here, so you miss this first one, there is a pretty nasty bump right under the bridge that just be prepared to hit it. That is the one that cameras that are stationed out here on the exit of turn 17 or 18 or 20 or whatever it is outside of Sunset will get those beautiful Sebring footage where they have one car that has their front right wheel cocked up in the air. That comes from that bump that they hit if they run a little wide. So the smoothest line through here is kind of this line that I'm taking. If we looked at the suspension movement in the car as I go through here, it's bumpy through here, but it's not unmanageable. The car is never like leaving the ground. It's pretty smooth on that line. So that tends to work really well. Then we get a good run coming out of the final corner and we take another lap. Any questions about the line at Sebring? I am not hearing any. So let me show you again what it looks like. I'll show it kind of from outside the car since we did it inside the car beginning. So coming into turn 1, we're looking for that kink in the concrete wall, which was here. Brake before it, turn in after it, off the brakes, go under the cone, 4th gear, let it run all the way to the edge. Cut the corner here, brake at the 3 board. Nice. Turn in early, but you end up with a late apex. Take this last corner from wherever we are. Look for the tires, the orange tires. There they are. Get a good run. I can't keep up. The track goes so fast. Keep the line through this angle really tight. It's the shortest distance. We're going to brake at the 4 cone on this particular day. And we're going to, boom, hit the brake, hold the brake, down to 1st gear, late apex. Straighten the wheel up, go. Take the S's. Treat them like real corners. Move the wheel as little as possible to minimize the friction. We're going to brake after the 4 cone and just before the 3. Brake, turn in, off the brakes. let the tires grip up flat out, keep our foot in it nice and wide on the exit here. We're going to draw a straight line to the left curbing, brake, off the brake, back on, use all the camber, all the compression through there. Have a nice double apex. We're going to have a really late apex in the last one to try to keep the car on the left side. We're going to brake and get off the brakes, roll the speed through, add throttle only when we can. We're skiing through here, get the car to the left. As soon as we get to the left, start turning right. Super late apex, get on power, get a good run coming all the way down the straight. Coming into Sunset, if we take the line that I take, we're going to drive it in really deep. So we're going to go almost all the way to the one cone. We're going to turn in first before we brake. Now we brake, keep the car straight, get off the brake, roll the speed, waiting in third gear till when we know we can squeeze the throttle and make the final corner to give us a nice sub 2 minute lap time. All right.
Chris, I did have one question. Do you have any visual references for Sunset?
The biggest visual references I've got, so let's go in. That's a great question. So the way I drive is I keep my eye way up in the distance. So I'm always looking way, way deep. So in this particular one, what I'm doing is on my way in, I'm trying to actually drive pretty close to this wall. So my first vision point, I'm looking for obviously where I want to brake, which is, I didn't even know I was going all the way to the final cone, to be honest. I was braking, in my mind, I'm braking after the 2 cone because I'm going 160 miles an hour effectively. So I'm braking after the 2 cone is my thought process, not braking at the 1. So braking after the 2, and I'm trying to create as straight a line as possible. So my vision is the flag stand and this blue wall, and I'm trying to draw a straight line close to that blue wall that allows me to be as straight as possible. In reality, I don't quite get there because I'm going so fast, and we don't want to make the mistake of turning in too early and hitting the wall. So I'm leaving a little bit of gap between me and the wall. But in theory, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we want to drive a straight line, right side gets close to this wall and this flag station to create as straight a line as possible for the shortest distance. And then at that point, I'm braking. And when you're on the brake pedal with that little bit of steering, the car can only go straight. Like, you have a little bit of steering, but you're asking so much of the car to both brake and steer that it can't do both. So all the steering is kind of got to go away, and the car is just going to end up going straight. And that's where we're scrubbing the speed. As I'm coming into this corner, my eyes are not out here, which is the temptation. My eyes are over here. I'm looking for when the concrete wall starts to take a bend. And I'm focused on that. And I have triple screen, so while you lose sight of this, I still see the wall over on the right, so you can't actually see it. And I'm looking for the bridge. I'm waiting to see the bridge, If you don't have the field of view to be able to see the bridge at this point, you really got to kind of focus on picking something else as a visual. So if I was to chop off my side screens, I would say as I cross over this white line, I need to be thinking about tucking it back in around the last 3 cones. So as it's braking, the car will end up past the white line, and then it starts to take like this move inside. Now I can kind of rely on that, and then I'll start to see the bridge coming into vision. And I'm looking at this bridge, I'm looking at the concrete wall, and I understand, okay, there's the concrete wall. I'm going to be apexing after this point. This is the first one. This is the false one. This is the liar. We want to hit the real one, which is right underneath the bridge effectively. So when I see this first one, I'm thinking, okay, perfect. I need to drive around that wall and apex behind it. So I'm bringing it in. Oh, there's the real one. Get out of the way, stupid windshield wiper. There's the real one. That's the one I'm trying to get down to. But it all starts with seeing that bridge and seeing that false wall. So I see the bridge right here. See the concrete wall. I know I need to apex around that wall, not this one, the second one. So we wait on it. We're steering to it. There it is. Now we can start getting back on throttle, keeping that angle. As soon as we cross that wall, we see the grass. That's our second apex point. And once we start turning in for that final one, I'm looking way down here at the track out point. the wall goes up at the end, and I know that if I can get my nose past where this wall starts to kind of go up, I'll be safe. If I am going and heading into the wall that is on the flat part, it's going to be sketchy. I'm probably going to have to get out of the throttle to make the corner. But on this particular occasion, I know by looking at it, okay, the wall's going up, the car's still turning, I should be safe to carry a nice wide angle through there. Does that help?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, cool. Great question. Anybody else?
Chris, I missed your first few turns, and I'm curious about that first complex, turn 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, so turn 1 and turn 2 and turn 3. I've been recording this, so I will post the recording on all those. So I invite you to go visit it. If you have any questions after that, just feel free to message me. But I went through them pretty good. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Not seeing any. Looking over there. If that's the case, then I will say, get out there, practice it. This track is one of the fun ones in my opinion. It invites really good racing. Passing points. I don't like passing in turn 1 unless you know how to do it, and by meaning you know how to do it, the situation allows for it. So you're able to get alongside your opponent on the inside. Don't pass around the outside unless your opponent is stupid slow, because it won't work. It's got to be on the inside, and you've got to get position on them before you make that move. The next opportunity to really make a good pass for someone is going down into the hairpin, getting alongside them, turn 7. We want to make sure we've got position before we make that commitment. So the nice thing about the hairpin is the turn-in point is so far down there that you can get in a good braking duel with somebody and get position on them before the turn-in point to comply with the rules. So that's good. The next passing point is you can make a pass into turn 10, especially if you really focus on what we were talking about, get off the brakes to allow grip to be in the car. You can take that corner from a shallower angle and be on the inside and outbrake your opponent and still make the corner and put them on the outside where it's all greasy and marbly and really difficult, and make a good pass there. I don't like passing into tower because it really invites an opportunity where the dive bomber takes such a drastic angle and runs out of room, and the car online just turns straight down and you end up in a T-bone situation. So I don't like passing in tower because it invites that. It's just really difficult to make a clean pass. You have to almost depend on a dive bomb to make it work. And then the last, I will show my secret. Nobody use it against me. If there's any pros in here, turn your ears off now. My kind of favorite place to pass is, so we're coming up through the final little S's here at Le Mans. Everybody does, and this is the way you have to take this corner. You've got to, if you want to be fast through this corner leading onto the back straight, you have to ski and drive this car all the way to the left to get a late apex going to the right. Everybody does it. Everybody does this. Look what this track looks like, though, over on the right side. Look at all this juicy real estate. I've definitely made quite a few passes by, at this point, instead of doing the traditional line, which is technically off the track, but it's not a 1X, so it is the racing surface. So instead of driving out here, driving this way, straight, bam, and driving it deep and braking hard and getting past my opponent, getting my nose past them before I even hit the brakes, and overslowing the car to make the corner. They can't drive through me, and sneaking a cheeky grab of a spot right here. And I only do that if it's like at the very end of the race and I'm fighting for a position that matters, because it relies on a lot of things to go right to make it work. It relies on you trusting your opponent, understanding they are going to take that position and make that move over to the left because they've done it 5 times already and I've been following them. And then you kind of ambush that spot. So use it at your own peril. I would say practice it before you try it, but it is possible. And then the second best place to pass is going into Sunset. There's just so many lines through here. You can get too wide going into the braking zone. It becomes a braking duel. You can go too wide all the way through the corner and not lose any time. This is just a really fun place to race in Sunset. Just to understand that if you're the inside car, there is a car on your outside. You got to leave them room. If you're the outside car, there's a car on your inside. Don't turn down and put them. Don't pull a BMW and push them all the way into this wall and they hit that wall like they did in that must have been like 4 or 5 years ago now, where the BMW hit that inside wall, or it was maybe an Acura because they were 3 wide there. Just be cognizant of what's going on around you all through Sunset, and make it through. But Sunset's a great opportunity to get too wide and really dice it with other people because there's a lot of room through the corner and a lot of lines. So those are my passing points for Sebring. Okay, well, if that's the case, I am going to call it there. I know we've run a little bit over time, but Sebring is a long track with lots of corners and nuance, so that's why. Like I said, I will post this later for people to be able to review later. If you're around, I invite you and recommend go do some of the practice races that are going to come online. I know Pro and Club have the first sanctioned one tonight. But I think somebody always throws up a sport and challenge one as well. So I suggest you go try it out. In whatever the case may be, go have fun. This is a great track combo. It's been a while since we've been here, and too long, in my opinion. And enjoy it and have a great set of races. And I will see you guys in a couple of weeks for the next track walk that we have. So thanks for joining, and you guys make this fun. Good luck.